Hello, there has come the time to talk about probably the most beautiful and hurtful thing that has ever happened to me, and that is my testimony. I feel so happy to be sharing this from the place that I am now, from the place that God saved me in order to be talking about this with you. And I hope that this story helps you find God, helps you understand a little better the things that God does in us. Also to know that it doesn't matter your problems or your situations, what you went through, things that have hurt you in the past, things that you don't know how to deal with them. It doesn't matter where you're at this moment, but there is always a solution and there's always healing to that when you submit it to God. So hello. Hello, my name is Lorna Sofia and I am currently 25 years old and I am a mother. That is my portfolio. I have to start by telling you a little bit where do I come from. I come from the beautiful island of Puerto Rico. I wasn't really born here, but I was raised here. I'm so grateful because from the very beginning, God took me from a country that there is from crimes to poverty to a lot of things. God took me from there and He flew me to Puerto Rico, literally. I had a really normal childhood. My mom used to go to church. I remember being little with her. She would be like praising the Lord. I would just be sitting there like, okay. I didn't really know what she was doing or what was happening. It was just like a casual thing for me. And I got to wear the most beautiful dresses. Like my mom would put me the most beautiful red and white and polka dot dresses and I would feel like a princess. That was my favorite day of the week. Yes, that's a fact. Just for that. ¿Qué pasa? At this point, I'm just a happy child with a happy family. When I was around the age 7 ongoing, my mom got really sick. That's the first time I remember seeing her battle with a lot of illnesses, but since I was really little and I didn't have like that talk, I didn't really know what was happening with her. I just started seeing my mom getting really weak. It started getting worse and worse and worse until she got narcolepsy, which is one of those sickness that basically it affects your brain and you start getting like sleepy all the time. So my brother starts taking care of me. My mom starts leading me into the charge of family members from her side of her family. It was amazing. It was great. It was like a little farm that they had. I loved to go there. Time went by that I started staying over because my mom was progressively getting worse and worse, and I was sexually assaulted in this days, and it was in the voice and the tone of this is just a game and you cannot tell anybody because this is our little secret. At the moment I was from 9 to 11, so this happened for some years, and I said what happened. It was actually in my naiveness. My mom was watching a telenovela and she covered my eyes in one of those scenes, and I was like, oh, why are you covering my eyes? I'm like, girl, I'm a grown-up girl. She said like, this is not good for you to see. And I was like, why, if this family member does this to me? And she was she started growing up and lots of things happened. But this is not the moment that my life changed. This is just starting to take a toll on my life, and I remember that the next day her sister comes and she is there with me. She is just like asking me questions, and she was firmly with me, trying to be present for me and my mother. It took a toll. On that same day, we were already on our way to confront the whole family, whole conversation. I was little and I knew that this was like very bad, but in my mind, I still didn't know the extent. I saw everybody so worried. I was just like, okay, this person's just gonna say yes, and I don't know what's gonna happen, but I guess we'll take it from there. We arrive at this house. The whole family is reunited. What I remember from this conversation was the hurtful words of everybody around me, how they were basically bashing me at that moment, and my mom on the side just holding on to me so tightly. She couldn't say anything. We were both in shock. I just remember just her holding me, feeling through that hold the love of a mother, seeing her not react to what was happening, indifference of everybody else. Everybody else was spitting words. They were saying very hurtful things. Keep in mind that at the age when this happened to me, I was 11 years old. I was very normal and a very happy girl. This happening to me, it was like the first time ever that I actually felt very sad and hurt, of course. I got bullying on school, but I wouldn't really attend to it because I was like happy and confident into who I was and the loving family that I had. This happening to me absolutely changed everything because I started seeing the world through their words and through their eyes instead of the child that I was once. I think this is a very crucial point in my life because when we left, I remember our brother picking us up. On that ride back to our house, I just remember laying on the back of the car like this. I couldn't think of anything but one thing. If there is a God, He's not with me. If there is a God, He was not protecting me. Fast forward, like it's like a movie, you know, like it's rolling and it goes like fast forward, and I am 13, so 2 years happened, and I think in those 2 years my mind blocked everything. I was just surviving, and I was like a kid, and my mom had to report this to the police, so I had a case going on. It got very intense because police had to come to my school. I was just like mostly embarrassed. I felt a lot of guilt. In that time lapse, that short time lapse, all of this happened, my mom was starting to get better. And my mom was seeing a change in her. And then when this happened, she got back to her illness. It got even worse. They have to give her more medicine in order for her to function. I also had this huge bag on me that it said, I am guilty for what happened to her. Like, I'm guilty for her feeling like this, being on a bed again. I stopped doing the things that I love the most. For some reason, I thought that if I left the thing that I love the most, it would be like I punished myself, and this is punishment enough. And keep in mind that I was 13 years old. These things are happening. I have to change school. In this new school, it was like, okay, forget everything that happened here and let's just create a new persona. And I started getting into rock, and I started getting into my scene phase. So if any of you remember that, Oh Lord. I started letting this define me, and I get my first boyfriend ever. I was 15 years old, and we had sex, but we had sex because I didn't know how to say no, and I didn't know that I could simply be like, no, if you want me, you have to wait for me. I was like, okay, so this is a normal thing, I guess. This is something that just happens. Like, okay, let's do it, I guess. I was not really dealing very well with, so that left me with trying to take my life. I found a bottle of pills in my mother's room. I just took like 20 of them, and the next morning my mom wakes up and she sees me literally like just passed out. How she managed to find out that I was literally passing out, it was because my cat wouldn't stop like meowing at her door, and so she's like, what happened? And then like my cat Fluffy, she took her from her room to my room, and she finds me, and obviously she gets me to the hospital. And in the hospital it's really interesting because it's like lapses. Like I couldn't even open my eyes. I was so weak, and I would go like like I'm here, my mind is here, and then it would go back, and then like again, and then go back, and again, and it would go back. And in one of those lapses, I remember the social worker, she's saying like, you are so lucky that she's alive, because it is too late to do like a wash of tummy. Not sure what's the term of that in English, but she's like, well, you're lucky because she can't get that anymore. It's too late, so we have to wait to see what happens with her. I remember hearing that, and I'm just like, ugh, like gone again. And the next thing, when I come back, I actually can open my eyes. I'm in an ambulance. I am on my way to a psychiatric hospital, and I was there for a month. In that month, I was like, my life is gonna change. I'm finally gonna find whatever is wrong with me, and I need to work on that because I am not okay. At this age, I was still 15. I start noticing that we're like, all of the teens are together, like girls and boys, and it was just really weird. And the first night that I got in, without a doctor seeing me, they just give me some pills, and I was like, shouldn't a doctor see me first? They're like, no, this is just for sleeping and to feel better, like reduce anxiety. In the time being, these other girls were just like, oh, never speak the truth, never do this, never do that, because they're gonna leave you more time in and blah, blah, blah. So they would be giving me like these tips and tricks. I started learning that in order to survive that moment, I had to lie, and I had to be very on point with what I said. And they also put me with an eating disorder in the hospital, so I had to eat with the other member staff. I couldn't even go to the kitchen, so I started doing what they're saying, and I just started lying, and I started lying about my progress, and that's how I became a professional liar. And I get out. 1 week later, I got back in because of a fight that I had with a family member in the house. When I get out, I was so done with everybody. I was so done with my family. I was so done with whatever the help they thought they were giving me, and I started to feel a lot of hatred and just things building up and anger, and I hated my mom. I hated life, and I also was starting really to get into humanitarian things, taking like the first step into being aware of what happens in the world. So it was like all combining, and I started feeling hatred towards my family, hatred towards the world, and of course hatred to God. And I mean hatred. No other way to describe it. When I was in high school, I had another boyfriend, and he was a very sweet kind and loving guy. All of this happened. He was dealing with the after effects of that. So what do you think happened? I left him. I was really mean to him. At that moment I was like, you're nothing, and obviously it was a reflection of myself because I didn't know how to be loved, and I didn't know how to love back, and I didn't know how to give positive feedback, and I didn't know how to communicate, and I didn't know how to express myself, and I didn't know how to express emotions because it was a time of suppressing all of these things. And fast forward, I reached the age of going to university. I'm 17 or 18, and I was like, I'm out of my house, and I leave my house because my mom was in a bed with depression. I just felt everything that happened in this house I costed. I decided to leave my house thinking that running away from it would solve all the problems for her. Like, okay, now I left, you're gonna be much better. And of course that was not it. In those years, that's what I started to learn, to run from my emotions, to run from my problems, to run from confrontations, to only lead to more toxic people. What happened was that because I left, I stopped taking all of my medications. It was not long. I think it was maybe a semester from university. Right there, I started taking drugs, and I started taking psychedelics, like LSD and things like that. I was like, at least I'm doing this and I'm not in my house, so if anything happens to me, my mom doesn't need to see me or needs to deal with me. And that was my thought. Like, I was like so alone in this. I felt so alone in everything, and especially because I didn't want it to keep causing problems to my mother, so I just completely stopped talking to her. I started experimenting all of these drugs. I started experimenting with relationships, and it started to get really bad. It started with like little verbal abuses, and then I would leave them, and then I would get somebody else. It would like escalate a little bit more, and then it started to get more personal, and then again the next one. It's like a cycle, right? Until I reached 2 boyfriends in separate times, but one of them got very physical with me, and like the police was involved, the destruction of a whole apartment was involved, and it started to be really, really, really bad. And at that moment I was doing so many drugs, and I was just literally taking anything to ease away my thoughts and the pain that I was feeling. And it was giving me side effects, and I would just start to get into levels of depression never felt before. The more drugs I took, trying to kill myself and just not feel anything in the process of it. In 2017, I was 19 at the moment. I remember that I was so lost and I was so broken. I was at the beach with my dog. I remember sitting, staring at the waves. In my mind I was screaming, if there is a God, tell me what to do. And 1 week after, the Hurricane Maria, one of the biggest hurricanes ever hit on the island, happened. I lost the little things that I had, and I was like, wow, I shouldn't have asked that question. That was a really bad question to ask. But I think I got the message, and I was like, I'm gonna go and travel the world. And I said, I don't know how to get out of this hole that I'm in, but I'm gonna promise myself 2 things. I'm gonna start eating, and I'm gonna stop doing drugs. It seemed like a very good combination. I don't know. In my mind, that was like the most brilliant thing it ever occurred to me. And I take this plane on December 31st of 2017, and already at 1st of January 2018, I was on a plane, and I get on this journey that I didn't know what was gonna happen. I had no plans, and it was just me and my dog and my hula hoops. I get emotional because this is a young girl on this plane. Not because of the age, but seeing the image now, this is a young girl looking for God so much, and had no idea what she was looking for. I started traveling, I started learning about gardening, permaculture, biodynamic gardening, natural products, and I was always like very inclined to this. I loved natural things, and because I wanted to feel close to my mom, I started going to monasteries and churches, and I started learning a new language. I do busking with my hula hoops. I started performing, like street performing with my hula hoops for money to survive. And I started hitchhiking, and I get into really beautiful places, also very scary places and moments. In all of this process, I still kept asking the same question. If there is a God, show me now. If there is a God, talk to me. If there is a God, tell me what to do. Literally, it would be like that. And it was crazy because at that moment, I was so blind. I'm not literally, but I was so blind because my heart, it had so many barriers. There was no other way for God to speak to me. He knew that the only thing that captivated my heart was to see nature. When I would ask these things, like a flock of birds would go by, and I would ask on another occasion and 3 rainbows would appear. And I would ask and something like supernatural would happen. And this started to shift, and I stopped asking that question. I started getting into churches and monasteries, and I was not asking anymore. I was trying to look for his presence. I was traveling through the Balkans, and there was a big impact on Islamic, Orthodox Christianity, and also Catholicism. I think it's worldwide. In one country, I would see the difference between the 3 religions, so I started getting really into what is religion and seeing it, having like their customs, and I would still be like, oh, this is like, you know, a way to keep people controlled and keep people brainwashed and keep people following orders and things like that. That was my thought. I started feeling reverence towards it, respect. What was a mockery started to feel sacred, and I started to feel like I wanted to learn more, but I didn't know how to ask. So the travel ends, and in that year I crossed 21 countries, and it was amazing. I come back to Puerto Rico because those last months I got into a relationship. In my heart, I started to feel like I wanted a family, but something in me knew that he was not the person for me to have a family. But I continued. We reached his home country. In there, he started to do drugs, and he started to do alcohol. That was the reason why he also went away from his country and started to travel. It started to escalate. The relationship got abusive. It got bad pretty quickly, like in a matter of weeks. When it got physical, I just remember being in a cemetery at 3 in the morning in a country and in a region that I have absolutely no freaking clue how to walk, where to be, and it was very hard for me to understand these people. And I was in the cemetery at that hour, and it was freezing cold. I remember crying and crying and crying and finding myself like that girl on that plane that had no strength at all, thinking, I healed so much. Why am I in the same position again? What happened was that I left. I was courageous enough to leave. Again, running away, right? But I left and I come back to my country. At this time, 1 year passed of me traveling. When I came back, I was just giving the excuse for I just want to finish a bachelor's. What happened was that my mom started inviting me to her church, and I was like, I'm going for you. I'm just going for you to keep you company so you're not alone, you know. In that meantime, I was so desperate because I came to my island with no money. So my friends at the moment, they were dancing and they invited me to go with them. I was like, I mean, sure, I need the money. I need to get an apartment. I need to get a car. I started dancing and I had a relapse on drugs, but because I was not doing psychedelics, I thought it was okay to do pills. And the pills, I was so long sober, it just got very bad really quick. But I was able to get out of that very quick as well. In one of the visits at her church, I don't remember the preaching. I just remember that when he called to accept God into people's lives, my body just like raised up. It just floated. It floated to the altar, and I fell down on my knees and I started crying and crying and crying, and just everything on me was so intense. But what I felt inside of me, it was like a river. It was like a river, and I can see that it was a river of the Holy Spirit getting inside of me because I could not stop crying. At the time that I was crying, it was also like the shedding and shedding. I accept God into my life. What a beautiful and lovely and most transforming thing ever. 1 week after, I meet my baby's biological father, and I met this guy, and he was like the perfect man, and he wanted a family, and he wanted to get married, and he believed in God and all of these things. And I was like, wow, this is a person. And I am 20 or 21, so I'm still really young. And I was like, finally, like, I want to trust somebody, I want to love somebody. But what happened? This guy turned out to not be the person that he said he was, and it was like all lies. So I fell in love with a mask of him. He wanted me to have an abortion, but because I was convicted of the Holy Spirit, I knew that it was not a thing that I wanted to do. I go on with my pregnancy. At this moment, I remember just hearing the word of God, making me fall in love with him and making me see details that only I could see. It was just between me and him. To start cultivating prayer, and I started cultivating a one-on-one kind of thing with him. Getting to know him. I didn't know anything about him yet because I was not reading the Bible. I was really congregating myself into church, but I'm so thankful that he put angels on my path so I could still have my way to him. And in this process, I thought that being spiritual would mean also doing new age things, and I started to get a little bit in that, but it was a fast like, no, you are not doing that. And he took me from there. I was able to not fall into that rabbit hole, establish like that connection really strong with him. A lot of things happened in that time. Those 2 years when my girl was first born, I started to lose hope, motivation to continue following him, because there was this question of, I'm doing everything you say, Lord. I'm doing everything you want me to do, Lord. And the thing that I desired the most is to have a family. Everything was going good on my business. Everything was going good on everything I did, honestly. But I started to feel like a hole, and I started to do decisions by my flesh, and everything was by me, by me, by me. And I started to forget about God. I was like, what is this sadness again? And it was not like before, but I was still sad, and I started to feel lonely. That moment of losing hope, I meet my future husband. I want to do a separate video with him. I want to say that God answers all prayers, and He knows your biggest wishes. But there's a thing about patience and patiently waiting in His time that it's so beautiful, because we get to see so much of His glory in us and the things that happen to us for His glory. Fast forward, I am now here, and I have found a community that has helped me walk in Christ so flawlessly and so beautiful. And of course there's problems, situations, adversities, but the strength, the peace, the patience, and the love that He has given me to do all of it, to be able to pray, to be able to love and forgive to the people that hurt me, and feel good and feel happy about the things that He's doing in me and doing in my partner and doing in my family. It's something that I thank Him every day. I don't know what is your situation. I shared a little bit of my story, and I hope we are able to talk even more about this. I don't know what you're going through, but I want to say that whatever it is, God has already won every battle. But if you're able to submit your life to Him, if you're able to submit your emotions, your anger, your hatred, I swear beautiful things and transformation happens. And it's not on how you look. That is a plus, of course. But it's not the main thing. It's the transformation that occurs inside of you, that radiates the love of God outside in you. I just wanted to do a little prayer before we head off. I hope this video helped you, let you know that there are things that we do and we feel shame and guilt, but God is able to also take away those things, because He sent His Son to us. And everything that we do to punish ourselves, like that 13-year-old me that didn't even know what was doing, was punishing herself. We don't have to do that, because He already did it for us. It's just us giving it to Him. Dear Lord, I hope that this video has been something of blessing into people's life. I hope that my testimony is able to reach the hearts that are broken, and the women that have felt like they lost everything and every sense of dignity, because oh Lord, what are we without You? The things that we do, the things that happen to us without You, Lord. You're the one that gives us strength. You're the one that gives us peace. You're the one that gives us conviction to be able to go through all things. Oh Lord, dearly Father, I hope that this word gets to somebody out there that is able to take You into her or his life, and is able to surrender their emotions and their worries and their bag of shame and guilt to You, Lord, because You already did that to us. And I hope they're able to find salvation into Your word and into Your promise, and to be able to walk in Your promise, knowing that there is a better thing out there, and there is a purpose for everybody, because You created us for Your image, through Your image, Lord. We're perfect in Your eyes, but we're sinners and we're corrupted souls. So please help us, Lord, to go back to You and to go back home. Amen.